Kelly tightened her grip on the folded funeral program, just as a pair of expensive heels clicked across the stone walkway. "Well," a familiar voice said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Look at you." Kelly slowly turned. Vanessa stood only a few feet away, dressed in an elegant black designer dress that looked more appropriate for a magazine cover than a funeral. Her enormous diamond ring caught the afternoon sun every time she moved her hand. Several relatives immediately drifted toward her. Someone whispered, "That's the same ring Ethan gave her." Another murmured, "She still lives in that penthouse downtown, doesn't she?" Vanessa smiled, as if she had arrived for exactly this moment. She looked Kelly up and down, before letting out a soft laugh. "Still single at 40, she asked with a smirk. "I guess some women never recover after losing the man they thought they'd marry." A few uncomfortable chuckles floated through the crowd. Kelly said nothing. Vanessa stepped even closer. "I got the man, the money, the penthouse," she continued, lightly touching her diamond. "Funny how life works out." Kelly met her cousin's eyes, without raising her voice. "Have you met my husband?" For the first time, Vanessa blinked. Then she laughed. "Oh, Kelly," she said loudly enough for the entire family to hear. "We're really inventing husbands now, at your own father's funeral." Kelly didn't answer. Instead, she calmly turned toward the cemetery entrance. A long black sedan had just stopped beside the curb. The driver stepped aside. A tall man in a tailored black suit climbed out and began walking toward them. Vanessa's smile froze. "My father always used to tell me that time reveals character better than arguments ever could." For years, I hated hearing that. Not because he was wrong. Because I wanted justice to happen immediately. 8 years earlier, I had watched my entire future disappear almost overnight. The man I loved. The wedding we'd spent months planning. The life we had promised each other. Gone. And standing in the middle of all of it had been Vanessa. My own cousin. While everyone else praised her for winning, my father had quietly packed away my unopened wedding invitations without saying a single cruel word. He never told me to forgive her. He never demanded I move on. He simply said, "Don't build your future around proving someone else wrong." At the time, those words felt impossible. Today, standing beside his casket, they echoed louder than ever. Relatives continued arriving in small groups, offering condolences before stealing curious glances toward Vanessa, whose confidence seemed untouched by the occasion. She accepted sympathy with polished grace, smiling politely while making sure everyone noticed the glittering stone on her hand. To most of my family, she was still the cousin who had married billionaire investor Ethan Cross. And I was still the woman she'd defeated. No one knew how much life had changed since then. No one knew why I had quietly disappeared from the social circles that used to follow every headline about Ethan and Vanessa. And almost no one knew why I had insisted on handling my father's funeral privately. Vanessa folded her arms. "So," she called after me, unable to resist one last jab, "where exactly is this mysterious husband?" The footsteps behind us grew closer. Every conversation around the cemetery gradually faded. One by one, heads turned toward the man approaching us. Vanessa stared at him. Her confident expression slowly drained of color. She whispered, almost to herself, "No, that can't be him." The man continued walking across the cemetery with the same steady pace, his attention fixed entirely on Kelly. He didn't look toward Vanessa. He didn't acknowledge the whispers spreading through the gathered relatives. He simply approached with quiet confidence. Kelly watched him for a moment before memories she had spent years burying forced their way back. 8 years earlier, she had believed she already knew exactly how her life would unfold. Ethan Cross wasn't just one of the country's youngest billionaire investors. He was the man who had proposed to her with tears in his eyes, promising they would build a marriage based on trust instead of headlines. "We're partners," he'd told her one evening while they finalized their wedding guest list. "Everything else is just noise." Kelly had believed him. Vanessa had seemed just as supportive. "I'll help with everything," her cousin had insisted. "You deserve the perfect wedding." At first, she truly acted like the cousin every bride hoped to have. She recommended venues. She attended dress fittings. She volunteered to coordinate meetings whenever Kelly became overwhelmed with work. But slowly, small things began changing. Whenever Ethan complimented Kelly, Vanessa somehow redirected the conversation toward herself. Whenever Kelly couldn't attend a planning meeting because of court deadlines, Vanessa happily offered to fill in. "I'll explain everything to Ethan," she'd say with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry." Kelly never questioned it. Why would she? Vanessa was family. Then the comments became stranger. "Kelly," Vanessa casually remarked during one lunch, "don't you think Ethan worries that you're uncomfortable with how wealthy he is?" Kelly frowned. "I've never given him a reason to think that. I'm just saying, men like him hear things." Kelly dismissed the conversation. She trusted both of them. That trust shattered only weeks before the wedding. Ethan arrived at her apartment looking exhausted. "I don't think you love me," he said quietly. Kelly stared at him in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" "I think you love what my money can give you." The words hit harder than any scream ever could. Before she could understand where they had come from, Ethan slipped the engagement ring off her finger and walked away. 3 days later, every business magazine carried the same headline. "Billionaire Ethan Cross announces engagement to Vanessa Morgan." Half the family congratulated Vanessa. The other half pitied Kelly. Only her father stood beside her. As the memories faded, Kelly looked back toward the cemetery entrance. The distinguished stranger had almost reached them. He never glanced at Vanessa. Why did he seem completely unfazed by the woman who had destroyed so much of Kelly's life? The stranger stopped beside Kelly and gently placed a hand over hers. "I'm so sorry about your father," he said quietly. "He was an extraordinary man." Kelly nodded, grateful for the calm in his voice. "Thank you for coming." Without another word, he stood beside her, giving his full attention to the memorial service instead of the growing audience around them. Vanessa folded her arms. "Oh, this is priceless," she said with a mocking laugh. "Did you hire an actor?" "I suppose everyone needs a backup plan when their imaginary husband doesn't exist." A few cousins exchanged awkward glances. One uncle chuckled nervously. The man finally turned toward Vanessa. His expression remained polite. "My name is Adrian." Nothing more. No explanation. No defense. His composure only seemed to irritate Vanessa further. "Adrian," she repeated sarcastically. "That's it, no last name, no introduction." He simply replied, "Today is about honoring Kelly's father." The brief exchange left several relatives noticeably uncomfortable. Even those who usually sided with Vanessa seemed surprised by how effortlessly Adrian refused to play her game. After the burial, everyone gathered inside the reception hall adjoining the chapel. Conversations slowly resumed over coffee and quiet condolences. Kelly remained near a framed photograph of her father, while Adrian greeted several older guests who had known the family for years. Then something unexpected happened. An older businessman froze in mid-conversation. He stared at Adrian before whispering to the woman beside him. "Is that Adrian Hale?" Within minutes, the whisper spread. "I've seen him on television. Didn't he fund that children's hospital? That's the Hale Foundation, isn't it?" Heads began turning throughout the room. Vanessa immediately forced a laugh. "Please," she said loudly, "do you honestly believe Kelly secretly married that asterisk Adrian Hale? Someone must have confused him with another man." She looked directly at Kelly. "This performance has gone far enough." Before Kelly could answer, The reception hall doors opened again. Every head turned. Ethan Cross stepped inside, dressed in a simple black suit. He approached Kelly first. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said sincerely. "Your father was kinder to me than I deserved." Then Ethan looked toward Adrian. A warm smile crossed his face. "Adrian," he said, extending his hand, "it's good to see you." Adrian smiled back and shook it firmly. "Good to see you too, Ethan." The room fell completely silent. Vanessa's face drained of color. She stared at the two men, as if the ground beneath her had disappeared. Then Ethan slowly turned toward her. "It's time everyone knows what really happened." The reception hall became so quiet that even the soft clink of coffee cups stopped. No one looked at Kelly anymore. Every eye was fixed on Ethan. Vanessa forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan," she said quickly, "this isn't the place." He looked at her for a long moment. "No," he replied calmly, "it's exactly the place. Kelly's father deserved honesty." Kelly remained silent. For 8 years, she had imagined this conversation 1,000 different ways. Now that it was happening, she didn't feel the need to speak. She simply let the truth find its own voice. Ethan faced the family. "When I ended my engagement with Kelly," he began, "I believed she was with me because of my money." Gasps spread across the room. "I didn't reach that conclusion on my own." Vanessa immediately interrupted. "Don't you dare blame me for your decisions." "I'm blaming myself for believing you," Ethan answered. The room fell silent again. He continued. "Vanessa convinced me Kelly was embarrassed by my wealth. She told me Kelly complained about my lifestyle whenever I wasn't around. She arranged private meetings to help with the wedding, then repeated conversations out of context until I believed them." Kelly lowered her eyes. She remembered every unexplained change in Ethan's behavior. Every distant phone call. Every unanswered question. Every doubt she could never understand. Ethan took a slow breath. "After we got married, the lies didn't stop." He looked directly at Vanessa. "I started noticing contradictions. Messages didn't match the stories I'd been told. Employees quietly corrected details. Financial records and old emails eventually confirmed what had really happened." Vanessa's voice grew sharper. "You're rewriting history because your business suffered." "No," Ethan replied. "I'm correcting history because I destroyed the wrong person's life." Several relatives exchanged stunned looks. One aunt slowly sat down, covering her mouth. Another cousin whispered, "She planned all of it." Ethan nodded. "I divorced Vanessa 3 years ago." The words landed like thunder. Someone dropped a glass. Kelly noticed several family members staring at the diamond ring Vanessa still wore. Vanessa instinctively hid her left hand behind her purse. "I never told the family," Ethan continued, "because I wanted privacy. Vanessa chose something different." Adrian stepped forward for the first time. His voice remained composed. "When Ethan and I became business partners, he told me everything. He never hid his regret." Vanessa turned toward him. "You knew." "I knew long before I ever met Kelly." Kelly finally spoke. "I met Adrian through a nonprofit governance project, almost 4 years after my engagement ended." She smiled softly at him. "He never asked about my past until I was ready to tell him." Adrian squeezed her hand. "I fell in love with the woman she became, not the headlines someone else wrote about her." The atmosphere inside the room changed completely. Relatives who had pitied Kelly now looked at Vanessa with growing disbelief. The story they had accepted for 8 years was unraveling in front of them. Vanessa looked desperately from one familiar face to another. No one came to her defense. She grabbed her purse and turned toward the exit. "I don't have to stand here and listen to this." Before she reached the doorway, Kelly's elderly aunt rose slowly from her chair. Her quiet voice stopped Vanessa in her tracks. "You owe everyone here the truth." Vanessa stood motionless with her back to the room. For several long seconds, she didn't turn around. Then, without facing anyone, she let out a bitter laugh. "So this is what you've all been waiting for?" she asked quietly. "To watch me fall?" Kelly didn't answer. Neither did anyone else. Vanessa slowly turned back toward the family. Her carefully polished confidence was gone. "I spent my entire life being compared to Kelly," she admitted. "She was always the dependable one, the honest one. Uncle David adored her. Every family gathering, someone praised Kelly." She looked directly at Kelly. "I was tired of coming second." A painful silence settled over the room. "When Ethan started talking about marrying you," Vanessa continued, "I couldn't stand it. I kept thinking, if I could make him choose me instead, then I'd finally win." Kelly searched her cousin's face. For the first time in years, she didn't see arrogance. She saw someone whose entire identity had been built around defeating another person. Vanessa lowered her eyes. "I convinced myself you didn't deserve him." Ethan shook his head. "You didn't just lie to Kelly," he said quietly. "You lied to me, and I let those lies destroy the best relationship I'd ever had." His voice cracked with genuine regret. "I doubted the woman who had never given me a reason to question her." He turned toward Kelly. "I've wanted to apologize for years." Kelly met his eyes. "I know." There was no anger left in her voice. No longing. Only peace. "I accepted a long time ago that neither of us could change what happened." Ethan nodded slowly. "Thank you." Adrian remained beside Kelly without speaking until Ethan stepped back. Then he smiled at Kelly. "Your father once told me something during the charity board meetings." Kelly looked at him curiously. "He said the strongest people never waste their lives trying to prove someone else wrong. They simply keep building a life that's right." Kelly couldn't stop the tears that filled her eyes. That sounds exactly like him. Several relatives quietly approached her. Her aunt reached her first. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We believed what was easiest instead of asking what was true." Another cousin nodded. "We failed you." Kelly embraced them one by one. "I didn't come here hopping for apologies," she said gently. "I came to say goodbye to my father." Across the room, Vanessa looked around for familiar faces. People who had once crowded around her now avoided eye contact. No one followed her. No one defended her. The admiration she had spent years protecting had disappeared in a single afternoon. Without another word, she slipped off the oversized diamond ring. She looked at it for a moment before quietly placing it on a nearby table. Then she walked out of the reception hall alone. Weeks later, the family stopped repeating the old story about Kelly losing a billionaire. Instead, they spoke about something very different. How one lie had divided an entire family. And how the truth, though painfully late, had finally restored it. That evening, after the last guest had left the cemetery, Kelly and Adrian returned to her father's grave carrying fresh white lilies. Kelly knelt beside the headstone and gently arranged the flowers. "I understand now," she whispered. "You weren't asking me to forget. You were teaching me not to let bitterness become my future." Adrian quietly took her hand. Together, they stood in silence for a moment before walking back toward the waiting car. Kelly looked once over her shoulder, smiled softly, and then turned forward. 8 years ago, her cousin thought she had stolen her future. She never realized she had only delayed Kelly from finding the life and the love she was truly meant to have.